Welcome to the Zen of Reffing Roller Derby, Lesson 18, The Three Types of Penalties. I'm Axis of Stevel, the author of this training manual. I'm filming this on June 4th, 2018. The content of this presentation is up to date as of this recording. Should this video become outdated or replaced by a newer version, I'll put a link on the screen to where you can find more information. And as always, you can find the latest version of the full training manual at www.tinyurl.com/zenreffing. A quick disclaimer: the WFTDA, MRDA, and JRDA are not responsible for the content of either the training manual or this presentation, nor do they make any claims as to the accuracy of their content. Another note: if you spot any errors or outdated information in this presentation, please put a comment on YouTube explaining the issue and listing the time code. Lesson 18, the three types of penalties. The rules divide penalties into three categories. Now, in prior editions, these were in 5 categories of penalties, and they did it very differently. I'm not going to worry about teaching the old system over there because it's obsolete. The current one makes 3 categories of penalties. These categories are illegal contact penalties, game structure penalties, and unsporting conduct penalties. Each of these types of penalties can be further subdivided into various penalty types, of which each of those can be further subdivided as well. So, number 1, illegal contact penalties. This can be subdivided into 4 groups. So we're going to say 1A, impact to an illegal target zone. This would be contacting an opponent in the back of the torso, legs, or butt. So think of this as a back block. Now, mind you, this doesn't mean every time somebody touches someone in the back, this can be, this is automatically a penalty, because oftentimes there's insufficient impact to warrant the penalty. What is sufficient impact? We'll be going over that in the next lesson. Right now, I just want to give you an overview of the penalties. We will dive really deep into all these specific penalties in subsequent lessons. Also, contacting an opponent above the shoulders, what we would call as high block. So, banging somebody in the face, basically, or the side of the helmet. Contacting an opponent in their legs, meaning mid-thigh or below, what we would call a low block. 1B, impact with an illegal blocking zone. This would be initiating a block with one's hands, forearms, or elbows, or a forearm penalty. Now keep in mind, it's always legal if you keep your forearms pulled into your torso, because at that point they're just an extension of your torso, or your side, or whatever. As long as they're pulled into your body, we're not consider that to be initiating with a forearm. Initiating a block with one's legs, mid-thigh or below, what we would call a leg block. Finally, initiating a physical or positional block with the head. In other words, like sticking your head in somebody's way, so they bang your head. That would be a head block. Number 3, or 1C, basically, other illegal contact. This would be contact, it's like physical contact between skaters, but it has nothing to do with a part of the body. It's in a time or place where such contact is not allowed. So, for example, blocking between jams. This would be early hit or late hit, which, yes, this is the illegal contact, hand signal. So, early hit or late hit. This would also be blocking or assisting to or from a downed skater. So, again, illegal contact, but you can't, block a skater who's down on the track. This would be blocking or assisting to or from out of bounds. Again, out of bounds block, like that. This includes using a straddling skater to benefit an inbound skater. It's like an assist using. Never mind. We're going to go into that later. Blocking or assisting to or from out of play. Again, skaters are supposed to be in the engagement zone. And of course, like I said, this is an overview. Jammer on jammer action out of play. We've talked about this in prior lessons. That's acceptable. Again, we're not going into the details here. But generally speaking, blocking or assisting to or from while out of play. Blocking or assisting while stopped or skating clockwise. We don't allow that either. Remember, blocking is supposed to be played, or derby is supposed to be played in the counterclockwise direction in the engagement zone while upright, while a jam is in progress. So as soon as we start deviating from those, that's where the other illegal contact penalties come into play. And finally, multiplayer blocks. Multiplayer blocks, this is the hand signal, multiplayer. There are 2 skaters grasping, linking, or using an impenetrable wall, preventing an opponent from passing between them. Again, we'll go into more detail in subsequent lessons on what exactly this means. Category 2, game structure penalties. These are no longer blocking penalties, but rather these are things that are making the game not work as intended. For example, the first would be illegal positioning. Think of this as 2A. This could be illegally exiting the track or gaining speed outside of the track area, what we would generally call skating out of bounds. And an illegal positioning hand signal is the, like the chop, like the axe coming down. Just one chop, not multiple. But, yeah, basically, like in the middle of a jam, and just the skater decides to just go out of bounds for no reason. They can't do that. That's a penalty. Or a skater's blocked out of bounds. Yeah, they got to accelerate a little bit to get him back in bounds, but the skater decides to start booking along at 10 miles an hour, just following the pack, but outside the track. They can't do that either. Assuming a downed position to avoid a block. We don't allow that. Starting a jam completely outside of the legal starting area. Like a jammer, for example, instead of starting behind the jammer line, they decide to start between the jammer and pivot lines. They can't do that. Failing to yield advantage after starting the jam partially outside of the legal starting area. That's what we call a false start, when a person is touching both a legal and an illegal starting area. And if they do that, they get a warning that they have to yield their advantage. If they fail to yield that advantage, then they gain a penalty. And again, we'll go into all this in more detail, blah, 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 blah. Destruction, basically illegally destroying the pack. Failing to return to the engagement zone after being warned to do so. Failing to reform the pack during a no-pack scenario after being warned to do so. 2B would be gaining position. This would be what we euphemistically say, cutting the track. So, illegally gaining position after re-entering from outer bounds. Skater's knocked out of bounds, and they just, instead of returning behind the skater that knocked him out, they decide to come back in front of him. They can't do that. Illegally gaining position after returning to gameplay from the penalty box, or say fixing equipment. Skater comes back in, instead of entering behind all blockers in the engagement zone, they decide to enter just right in the smack middle of the pack. Can't do that. 2C, interfering with the flow of the game. This would be, for example, illegally preventing a jam from beginning. We want the game to flow. We've talked about game flow. We want the game to have a nice, orderly progression. We will stop for urgent things, an injury, for a track repair, for certain officiating issues we need to clean up. We were happy to stop for them. We are happy to stop for any requested timeout or official review from a team. We are not happy to stop because the teams do something screwy that prevents a jam from beginning. For example, a team requesting too many timeouts. They don't have any timeouts. They decide to request one anyway, and they successfully stop the game clock. Another example, calling off a jam will not lead jammer. Well, they called off the jam. We wanted that jam to continue for the full 2 minutes. Weren't supposed to do that. That's a penalty. A fouled out skater interfering with the jam. Again, a fouled out skater, maybe they can certainly go sit in the audience, but they can't get up and go run on the track and start interfering or such like that. They have certain behavioral expectations. If they violate those, it's a penalty. Forcing a jam to be called off by too many skaters. Again, 4 blockers from each team can participate in a jam. 1 jammer from each team can participate in a jam. We understand miscounting happens and we'll wave the extras off the track, but if a team decides that we're just going to send in 6 blockers anyway, well, that's that's a problem. We can call the jam off, and that's a penalty. 2D, other illegal procedures. This would include, this is a wide variety of just technical infractions. This would be including various infractions involving the penalty box. For example, leaving the box early. Various infractions involving star passes or control of helmet covers, what we call star pass violations. This would be improper skates or improper uniforms or improper jewelry, improper use of safety gear, any number of miscellaneous technical infractions. This is also interesting. This is also preventing a star pass via an illegal action, what we call pass interference. And this is probably in my opinion, this is a miscategorized penalty if it's being put in here. Because, for example, if I use my forearm to prevent a star pass from going through, That was really that was a contact penalty. I used my forearm, it had impact on the jam. But yet, we're going to call that as a pass violation, and or pass interference rather, and that's technically an illegal procedure. But it actually was more of a physical penalty that impacted a specific skater. So this is kind of where the rules are, and the hand signals documents and such are like lumping this particular penalty, but it probably doesn't actually belong here. Finally, we have unsporting conduct penalties. Unsporting conduct is a wide variety of infractions for behaviors or contact outside the acceptable range of the sport. They're loosely divided into two halves, misconduct and insubordination. Both are technically considered misconduct penalties, but you can, however, use the insubordination verbal cue for some of these. Roughly speaking, these are, for misconduct, would be impersonating an official, as I said, physical or positional contact outside the range of what is acceptable for the sport. For example, blocking while airborne, reckless entry into the penalty box, intentional jabbing with the elbow or knee, certain types of positional head blocks. Positional meaning you stick your head in the opponent's way so they can't get through, and certain of those. We'll go into detail later. Positionally blocking a downed skater, preventing them from standing, removing an opponent's helmet cover from their head. Hiding the star would be another type of misconduct. Faking impact, meaning like a person bumps, opponent comes and makes contact with you in the back, so you intentionally fall so that the referees will think it's a back block. Sometimes you're gonna get away with it, and other times you're gonna be like, yeah, that person was not really they fell on purpose. What they used to call embellishment, they do it a lot in soccer, and at least in not as much with the Americans, I'm told, but a lot of like world soccer. That's a penalty. Intentional enforceable contact to an official. Now that's more getting into the expulsion range here rather than just a penalty, but that's an illegal type of misconduct action. Adopting a downed position before a block to draw a penalty upon an opponent. Remember, a skater cannot intentionally block a downed opponent. So if the skater's here, the opponent's coming in for the block, and just before they hit, boom, they take a downed position. Well, as we said before, just like when they turn and expose their back, this person then becomes the initiator over here because they've changed directions, and so they're initiating a block with their back rather than getting in the back. So essentially, by adopting a down position, what the person's doing is they're initiating a block well down rather than the other one blocking a down skater. So, but we'll go more into that later. Violating the policies of the governing body association under whose jurisdiction the game is being played. A little hard to explain. Well, again, we'll go into this later, but one example would be having too many bench staff. Basically, it's the same penalty. In the olden days, this used to be an illegal procedure. Now we've moved it to misconduct. Nothing really has changed here. Finally, profane, abusive, or obscene language or gestures directed at a non-official. Meaning screaming obscenities at an opponent, or yelling obscenities into where the audience can hear you, or even at your teammates. At times you can get that. So yes, that can certainly lead to a penalty. Now, something to keep in mind: this is not all the possible misconduct penalties here. There are going to be others as well. These are just some of the more major ones. Insubordination penalties, and again, insubordination is a type of misconduct. It's like a subcategory. Profane, abusive, or obscene language or gestures directed at an official. Again, it's basically the same as at a non-official, except, this time they're giving the finger to an official rather than a non-official. So, but we categorize it slightly different. More commonly, willful or neglectful failure to obey the instructions of an official. This is most commonly failing to leave the track after being issued a penalty. Finally, the hierarchy of calls. Sometimes an action warrants a penalty for multiple reasons. For example, two opposing skaters manage to make leg-to-leg contact that forces an opponent down. Well, let's say this one over here was the initiator, and they come up and their legs collide. Is this a low block for striking a target in their legs, or is this a leg block for the initiator using their leg to initiate a block? It's both, really. I mean, so in this case, what the official should do is issue the penalty for the category, basically the type of penalty for which they feel the most confident in the call. That could be the leg block or the low block. Another example would be going up and if a skater forearms an opponent in the back and knocks them down. Do you feel more confident in the forearm aspect of the call or the back block aspect of the call? If one or the other, issue it as that. If an official feels equally confident in multiple possible calls, use this hierarchy. Misconduct goes at the top. After that, you're pretty much going through penalties in the order in which we categorize them during this lesson, which is the same as you'll find them in the rules. So misconduct, illegal target zone, illegal blocking zone, illegal contact, multiplayer block, illegal position, gaining position, interference, and illegal procedures. So issue the penalties roughly in that order. This really is getting more of a stylistic thing. It's good for officials to get this. At the higher levels of play, you're going to expect to get this right. There's an advantage in doing this, because if you go to call a back block and you hear another referee calling the forearm, you may not realize you're referring to the exact same action. So if you both are calling it as a back block, the penalty tracker knows that's one penalty and they can get it correctly recorded. So there are certain advantages in using the hierarchy of calls. That being said, if you need to call it outside the hierarchy because you're sure that it was a forearm, or you're more sure it was a forearm rather than a back block, call it as that. That concludes Lesson 18, Introduction to Penalties. I will be back in Lesson 19 with Illegal Contact Penalties, Part 1. And that's where we get lots of fun. We're going to start diving into lots of detail, and hopefully I'm going to be able to dig up some good footage to start showing you on what these types of penalties look like. Thank you.